Hello, hi there. Okay, let me do some adjustments before I start. Okay, everything good? Sounds good? I'm not at my normal office, so I don't have my setup here. Hope the sound is good. I'm using the headphones, but yeah, how it works. So, what I want to do today is just to share some time working publicly with you all, and I have a talk in a few weeks about the REST API, and the main idea of this talk is how to share how we can communicate with a WordPress site from the outside. In order to do that, we have the REST API, which is like the best way to communicate with the data in our WordPress installation from anywhere. So I want to spend some time talking about that, like talking how we can access data through the REST API and how we can authenticate ourselves in order to access restricted information from the REST API, like restricted endpoints. For example, there is some information that we don't need to be authenticated, which would be maybe the list of posts of a site, but then if we want to publish a post, we need to be authenticated. So I would like to check like the different ways we can do that, and that could be useful for understanding. This would be useful for developments we do inside the admin, like for example, development for the block editor, development of blogs, and understanding how authentication works inside WordPress would be useful, but also the same endpoints that we can use from within WordPress can be used from the outside. In order to do that, we need to authenticate ourselves somehow, and we are going to review like the different ways we can do that. So I'm going to leverage ChatGPT in order to help me with shaping some ideas that I have. But I'm going to start writing some diagrams here. And what I'm going to do is, REST API Authentication. So these are the different ways to authenticate ourselves before using the REST API. The most straightforward way is cookies. Then we have application passwords. These are already available from any WordPress installation. These are provided by WordPress core. So I'm going to somehow, let me see if I can do this. I can do this, and then we can wrap this in another, like this, okay. And then what we can do is something like this, but I'm going to move the stroke. I'm going to put this, which I actually want this to be lighter, and on the background Okay, and this, the background is going to be white, and also here, and this, the background is going to be white and a bit behind. Yeah. Okay, so this is WordPress core. So we don't need to install any plugin in order to use this. But then we have some others that are actually very common in other stacks, and I'm going to put this in yellow, which are JSON Web Tokens, and OAuth 2. And these we require plugins, WordPress plugins. Okay, so these are the different approaches we can take in order to authenticate ourselves before REST API authentication. What else? Well, I'm going to spin up a WordPress site using Studio. Okay, I have REST API tests here. I can open the site. That this is opened in this port. So under WP JSON, we should have available the okay, yeah, one requirement of REST API. So REST API is available from core, but in order to use it, we need to set one thing, and that thing is the permalinks. So what we can do here is go to the same site, go to the admin dashboard, we are going to settings, permalinks. As you can see, the permalink structure is plain. With this setting, REST API won't work, so we need to choose any other. I think that this one is good enough, or maybe this one. So once we save changes, now it should work. We come here and we say, yeah. So we have under WP-JSON, we have available the different endpoints. The structure of the REST API, it follows a specific structure, which is namespace, version, and endpoint. So this is the structure of each endpoint. So the core endpoints are available under I don't remember by heart, but let me go here to the REST API. Using the REST API. Key concepts is this thing, yeah, WP v2. WP v2, exactly. And then the endpoint, and there are a lot of them. So if we go to our site and we do WP2, if we do WP2, here we have all the routes that are available in this specific namespace. Why is this important? Because we can define our own namespaces and we can define our own versions. Okay, so you will probably find, for example, here we can see these different namespaces, and each namespace can define different versions. So this is core, but then different plugins can define different namespaces and different versions. So this is important to understand. But with WP v2 is the standard path for core endpoints. So, okay, I like a standard path for WordPress core endpoints. Yeah, so this is this is this but okay, now let's focus on cookies. So cookies is the way the REST API endpoints are authenticated inside the WordPress admin, and especially for the block editor. So the block editor is like a big React application. Okay, I want to put this idea like the block editor. The block editor. So if we go to any WordPress installation and we go to the block editor, we can go to the block editor from Appearance Editor. This is the site editor. But we can also go to a post. We come here and we go to a post. And if we check, we can inspect. And we can see here in network all the different requests that are being done to the REST API from the block editor. So if I hello here okay, how can I if I remove what can I do to trigger a specific REST API request from here? So if I add any heading, okay, let me see if we are here, localhost. How can I see this? Okay. In core, if I save, well, here's the cookie, admin, post, PHP, post action, edit. Okay. No, we should be in a place where we can see these things. For example, if I save, okay, let me try another thing. Okay, let's ask ChatGPT. Okay. How can I? Okay, I want to. Okay, if you want help, why not ask for help to the most popular friend of all, of everybody. Okay, I want to see in the. Okay, I'm logged in as an admin in WordPress. I want to see in the console how the requests in the I want to see in the console how the requests in the block editor, how the requests to the REST API in the block editor are sent with the cookie. Okay, we have already done this filter by etc or type in the filter box. So if we are here, here for example, this is a post that is doing this. So every time I save, yeah, exactly. Okay. Here we are. This is what I was looking for. So when I save from the block editor, we are doing a request to the REST API, in this case WP JSON WP posts, and this is a post. So this request needs to be validated. I cannot publish or I cannot save a post if I'm not properly, if I don't have the proper permissions, if I'm not the author of the post, or if I don't have the capabilities, or if I don't have permission to do that. So how do the REST API check that from the block editor? It does that because of this. Because it's receiving this cookie, and the way Okay, let me look for so okay, I have a diagram here. Let me see. It was in Twitter profile. So there's a function which is called REST. Okay, there's a function that is called REST. This. And let me look for the information about this function. Check for errors when using cookie-based authentication. WordPress built-in cookie authentication is always active for logged-in users. So this is always active every time I do anything here. However, the API has to check nonces for each request to ensure users are not vulnerable to CSRF. Let me see if there are some other press cookie, check errors. Okay, let me ask. Which function is the one that sets the current user logged when? Well, yeah, the thing is that in this case, the cookies go through this function to check if there are any errors, and if not, it just go to the endpoint permission callback, where we can check if current user can, and then we do actually the endpoint callback, right? We have two. We have the permission callback and the endpoint callback. Well, let's ask ChatGPT. How do I create a custom REST API endpoint in WordPress, including permission checking and custom callback? all of this is actually documented here. Adding custom endpoints, yeah. So yeah, we registered. We need to hook into the REST API init. The REST API init. Okay, we can read this. This simple function that looks like this. This function get the posts from a specific author and return the the title of the last one. So to make this available via the API, we need to register a route. This tells the API to respond to a given request with our function. We do this through a function called register REST route, which should be called in a callback on REST API init to avoid doing extra work when the API isn't loaded. Okay, so the REST API is loaded, and once we have that, we can register new routes. We need to pass in 3 things to register REST route: the namespace, which already includes the version, the route we want, which is specific endpoint. We can also pass a specific syntax that can be used to capture parameters of the endpoint. So we'll come back to the namespace in a bit, but for now let's pick my plugin v1. We're going to have the route match anything with author ID, where ID is an integer. Okay. Right now we're only registering the one endpoint for the route. The term route refers to the URL, whereas endpoint refers to the function behind it that corresponds to a method and a URL. Okay. For example, if your site is example.com and you've kept the API path of .wp-json, then the full URL would be example.com, .wp-json, my plugin, v1, author, blah, blah. I see. So, yeah. Okay, on sites without permalinks, so yeah, the REST API is always enabled, but in the case permalinks are not enabled, we need to use this way to call the different endpoints. Yeah. Okay, namespacing, arguments, permissions, callback. Okay. So yeah, this is the callback and this is the permission callback. Yeah. So what happens when I do a request to an endpoint from within the WordPress admin? So I authenticate myself, so that means that there is I think that's set in the global variables of WordPress. Let me see. Okay, once I'm logged, how do REST API endpoints once I'm logged and within WP admin dashboard, how do REST API endpoints validate that I'm logged and that I'm me. So yeah, you are authenticated via the login cookies. So WordPress logged in. If we go here, we see that we have several cookies, and I think these cookies, I can see them from application cookies. Yeah. So here I have the cookies. These cookies are sent on every request that I do. So every time I do a request to the REST API, all these cookies are sent. So here we have WordPress logged in hash. What is this? WordPress logged in hash. WordPress sec. Okay, that's not available. And WP settings. Okay, WP settings 1. Validates authentication cookie. The checks include making sure that the authentication cookie is set and pulling in the contents if cookie is not used. Make sure the cookie is not expired. Verify the hash in cookie is what it should be and compares the two. Okay, so validate auth cookie. This validates the cookie itself. There's also a nonce, another security system that this is sent as a header. So if we come here, we should see the request headers. They include a nonce. Yeah, here, WP nonce. So they include a nonce. Okay, let's check this WP, because if we come here, we have a WP WP, and what we can do is WP we have API fetch, or we should. API fetch is an internal function provided by WordPress that allows us to do requests to the API. And because of that, it already handles things like the domain we're in. We don't need to provide it. Okay. We have done this request, and here, this is the request that we have done. It handles this function. It also handles the nonces. It creates the nonce. It adds that nonce to the header. So in this case, I want to, does WordPress check which user is doing the request from the cookie, or is it set as a global variable somewhere, and it reads that from there? So yes, WordPress checks the cookie to determine the user. Okay. So is the user determined on every request from the cookie? Okay. The user is determined from the cookie on every single request. So WordPress parses and validates the login cookie on every HTTP request, including REST API calls. There is no session in memory between requests. Okay. So, okay, this is a nice explanation. We boots PHP boots up, index, load, settings. WordPress calls init. Somewhere during init, we do current user. Okay, so every time I do a request, all of this is triggered. Get current user. What it does is it checks the cookie, reads the login cookie, parses and verifies the HMAC, which I don't know what that is, confirms the expiration date, and returns the user ID, and the user ID is set on here. So two ideas: the cookie is sent on every request, and it is used to validate the user, but the user is set as a global variable. Even in REST API and Ajax, the same process happens. And this is the other thing in headless environments, where we don't have a cookie available because we are not doing the request. Okay, let me, here cookies, this is provided by WordPress core, but cookies is a bit special because this, I'm going to put this in a different color, maybe this. Okay. WordPress core, but this is this is from within a WordPress installation. This is from within a WordPress installation, from within a WordPress site. So requests done from within a WordPress site. But then we have this. The background is going to be this. Okay, provided by WordPress core and WordPress plugin. Okay, so yeah, these only cookies are only and REST API endpoints are only validated through cookies when the request is done from within the WordPress site. So this is how it works. The cookie is validated. From there, validate auth cookie. Validate auth cookie if the cookie is valid, it returns the user ID, and the user ID is then set as a global variable here. No, the user ID is used to load the WP user object, and all the information about the user is the one that is loaded as a global variable. Okay. So this is how the validation works with cookies. Okay. Wow. Okay. Can you create a diagram with this flow? I'm interested. I want to reflect what happens when a request to the REST API is done from within WordPress site, and how the user is authenticated via the cookie sent with the request. So ChatGPT, one really cool thing is that when you ask for a diagram, it can return a mermaid diagram. you make it a mermaid diagram? Because I think it's creating like a, it's creating an image, and I want a mermaid diagram. Yeah. And if I go to mermaid diagrams, try editor, mermaid diagrams online. Yeah, this, okay, we have this, nice. But now, let me, I have just discovered this, which seems like an application to generate Excalibur diagrams from mermaid. So we can try this, and let's try this diagram here. So now we can come here to our and we can tune this. I like this, and so we send API request, for example, this one, and I'm going to do this. This is going to be this, for example. This includes this, and the header. Let's do this. Includes the cookie. No. And header. So this includes the cookie, WordPress logged in, right? If we come here, WordPress logged in, and if we come to sources, application was, yeah, WordPress logged in with the specific hash that is sent. Okay, I don't know why there are different cookies, maybe because I have them from all the sessions. Okay, let me see if I can remove all the cookies. And okay, if I remove all the cookies, then WordPress cannot know if I'm authenticated or not, so I need to log again. So I need to log again. And how do I log again? So here in REST API tests, which is my site, I go to settings, and here's the password. So admin, and then password. Okay. So we have logged in, I have settings. This is the key. This is the one that actually contains. Let's see the so if we come here, we have here the value of the cookie. Let's see. Yeah, so it contains the name of the user and some values. So when this cookie is authenticated, we get the ID of the user, which in this case will be 1, and with that we can certify. So we send the API request to this endpoint. With the request, we send the cookie and we send the header. Then the auth system validate the cookie. Red cookie WordPress logged in. We read the cookie. We read the cookie because it's sent from the browser. Then okay, I'm going to remove this step because I think it's not clear. If the cookie is correct, then we look up user from cookie data from the user ID. Then we return the user object. This user object is set as global current user. Then we have this check Ajax referrer. Okay, so the user is already set. And now we check if we check the header, this one. If nonce is valid, root request to callback. And if we have 2 callbacks to run, first the permission callback. First we need to run the permission callback. okay, permission callback, and eventually, if everything goes well, I return the response. Permission callback, and then the callback. Okay, which can be from callback. Okay, nice. Yeah, I think this is a good representation of how things go from the cookie with the cookie approach. Now, application passwords. Okay, let's ask. Now, with application passwords, how would this work? How would the authentication process, how would work for the for REST API endpoints? Okay, so in this case, we don't have this is with cookies. Let's make this okay, cookies, this go behind. I'm going to make this like this, something like this. Okay. Now, application passwords. You know what? I'm going to make this background like this, and this I'm going to make it white. Okay, now application passwords, I'm going to make background like this, and the like this. Okay. So this is something similar, but okay. In this case, we don't have a cookie. What we have is another header, and also we don't have a nonce because the authentication happens completely from the outside. So what we have here is a header with the credentials, credentials. This. Okay, let me see. Okay, this is the diagram. What we send is okay. Okay. So what we have is we send the credentials via the specific header. So the client from the browser, from any other application, this should be, let's say, from within WordPress. And this is from outside WordPress. From outside WordPress. Okay. The client, external app, or JavaScript, if allowed cross origin, sends a request to the REST API with this header. Okay, which it goes to whatever. This is the final application password, which, by the way, application passwords, what are they? We can get an application password if we go to our user profile, and here we can get an application password. So the idea behind the application passwords is that we can authenticate ourselves with requests, but without using our regular password. So we can very easily create additional passwords that can be used specifically for requests, and we can remove those additional passwords without affecting the one we use to log in the system. So in this case, tests REST API auth, and here we have an application password. So in our case, this is our application password, and what we can do is something like this. In my case, I can do something like this: admin. This is a header I can add to my request, and WordPress already has all the processes to validate this. Okay, this is interesting. Notable differences from cookie nonce auth. So cookie nonce auth is used from within the WP admin, but with application passwords, not for external use. Requires login cookie, yes. Application password doesn't require to be logged anywhere. Requires nonce, and application passwords don't require. This method requires a specific authorization header, while cookie doesn't. Can work cross-domain. Here we have the restriction of course, and this is secure for persistent use, because we can store the secure for persistent use. I don't know what does that mean. But yeah, application passwords are a good approach for headless WordPress apps, integrations with automation tools, continuous integration processes, command line tools, any approach that is not cookie based. Mhm. Okay. I want to understand better the internal processes used by WordPress to authenticate a request with a authorization header using application passwords. Okay, so the request comes in. Okay, so every time we do a request to WordPress, there is this flow that happens whether we are accessing a page or whether we are accessing the REST API, which includes going through this okay, so we have this filter available. The filter allows plugins or core features to override the user authentication. Okay. And we have this function, application password check. That is defined here. Application password. We can look for these here. Let me see if there are more. REST application password, collect status. Okay, this is the test. REST application password, controller, status. Tries to retrieve the user, then it calls check application password. Okay. Okay. I see. So it gets the username and password because it's passed through the header. Then we get the user details from the username, and then we check that for that username there's an application password defined. So we get user meta, we do application passwords, and then we check the password. If everything works, then we set the current user, so the current user becomes available globally. So now the request is treated as authenticated, And the REST API permission callback can use current user can and get current user ID, etc. If auth fails, REST not logged in. Okay. Each password is stored like this in user meta. Is stored in application passwords. So functions that are involved in this process. The WP application password check, which parses the header, gets the user, which is this one, password check, parses the header and gets the user, and it runs check application password to check if that for that user there's that application password available. It retrieves the application passwords from the metadata of the user, get user meta, and then compares the check password, the one that exists okay, iterates over all the application passwords and check if one of them is the one that we are passing through the heading. And then the rest of the process is the same. We set the current user and we can get the current user. To log which application passwords are being attempted, you can hook into the process. Okay. So now that we understand this process a bit better, we can fine tune maybe we can fine tune this from here. Okay, let's see if client from. So we sent the we sent this, we parse of the authorization header, we look up by username, and then once we have the username, we verified that the metadata for that user has the application password. But one of the application passwords defined for that user is the one that we have used to authenticate. So once we have that, we set the global current user and the rest is the same. Okay. So yeah, I think this diagram we can do it better, but I would like to move on to the other authentication methods. So we have cookies for requests done from within the WordPress site, from within the WP admin. For example, all the requests that are done from the block editor, they use cookies to authenticate users. But also they use a security system called nonces. So it every request includes the these two things, like the cookie and the header with the nonce. Then we have application passwords that can be used for requests from outside of the WordPress site. For example, from a headless application, from CLI, from any source that doesn't use cookies. Okay, but the thing with application passwords is that we are authenticating the requests without providing any granular authentication. So it's like everything that can be done by that user can be done we are authorizing everything that the user provided by the authorization header can do, and that's not like the best way, because it has security risks. So another way to do that, because at the end that password can be used to do anything on behalf of the user. If anyone can access that application password and we are actually sending that application password through with the requests, then anyone could do anything on our behalf. Ideally, these application passwords are used only from the server, so they are not visible, they are not public, but even with that, it's a bit risky. So there are more ways to do this authentication, and another way to do that is using JSON Web Tokens. So, okay, what's the difference between an application passwords? Yeah. So one difference is that JWT authentication requires a plugin. Then the authentication mechanism, it's similar because they both need to add a header. With application passwords, we add an authentication header, but with JSON Web Token, we add a token, with a better token. Authorization better and authorization basic. Okay. This is interesting. So the thing with application passwords is that we need to so each request needs to resend the credentials. Okay. Because in order to work properly with all the, it needs to be available. Okay, it needs to be available, but with JSON Web Token, we only send the token once, and then that token is stored in the client. Mhm. So we don't need to resend the token on every request because we can store that. We can store that in the application. Login once, store token. Password must be stored securely and sent with every request. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's. Okay. Let's ask this. Explain me this. Okay, it refers to how the client maintains a user logged in state between multiple requests to the server. Okay. Is it not unsecure to store an application on a client? Would it be better recommended to use application passwords from the server? I see. So, okay. Okay. So application passwords are not really useful for web applications. So they are, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So application passwords. Okay, let's add this to application passwords. I'm going to remove this because okay, cookies auth workflow. What I want to add is that application passwords Hi, Priveska. She's asking what I'm working on. What I'm working on is on just exploring the different authentication methods we have for the REST API. So this is more or less the diagram that I have created. Whenever we do a request to the REST API, there are some endpoints that need to be authenticated and others don't. But for those that need authentication, we have like different ways. One way is via cookies, which is the method used internally by WordPress. So every time we do a development inside WordPress, for example, blog development, any new page, like a custom application that relies on the WordPress data layer, a custom blog, extending the blog editor somehow. So we can rely on cookies for authentication every time we do a request to the REST API. For example, the fetch API method already every time we do a request, we send a cookie, and that cookie is used to authenticate us. So we don't need to worry about sending any specific information about us. But if we want to do a request to the REST API of our site from outside, from an application, from a CLI command, or from whatever, we cannot use cookies. We need to use other methods. One method we can use is the application passwords. So application passwords can be created here. If we go to the profile of any user, we can create an application password. These are like additional passwords we can use. And they are meant to be used in applications. The purpose of having application passwords is that we can create additional passwords to be used in different applications without affecting the password we use to log in. So we can remove them safely if we don't need them anymore for the specific application we created it for in the first place. But this has the caveat that the password we create would allow to anyone to act on our behalf. So that's why there are other approaches, other systems that are more secure, and that's what I was exploring. Right now I was kind of comparing these two approaches, application passwords and JSON Web Token. For example, application passwords are native in core, so we don't need any external plugin, but for JSON Web Token we need a specific plugin. And so yeah, application best practice is to use application passwords from the server side, because in that way that application password is not visible from the outside. Yeah, so we can use it from for any Node.js server, from any cron job, from any continuous integration process, but not for a public React app. If we want to use, if we want to access the REST API from a public React application, then we would need a JSON Web Token. Okay. And here it says Alternatives for front-end client-side authentication. So we have JWT authentication. You control the login flow and need tokens that expire. So one thing is that we set so the way it works is that we, from the application, we request the token to the WordPress site, then we receive the token, we store the token, and with that token, what we can do is to do requests. But that token will have an expiration date, so at some point we would need to refresh the token. Okay, so now what are the risks of storing JSON web token in local storage in a web app done in React? Okay, so the recommendations for JSON Web Tokens is okay, then yeah, I need to check this more carefully, like what are the security risks of okay, what are the recommendations for using in a headless WordPress app done in React, for example? Okay, we can use a plugin, and then we ask for the token, and then that's the key. Store the okay, we can store the JSON Web Token in memory or an HTTP only cookie, not using local storage. Protect roots in React by checking token presence and validity, and then we can use. Okay, I like this approach. Store the token in memory, secure, clears on reload, but not persistent. So we should use short expiration, implement a refresh token system stored in an HTTP cookie server generated. When the access token expires, the React app uses the refresh token to get a new one. So we refresh the okay, if I can use local storage, what's the best way to store a JSON Web Token safely? So yeah, this is what I was checking right now. What trade-offs come with using HTTP only cookies on the server side? What I think is that the first trade-off is that you need a server, so the application cannot be completely static, which is one of the advantages of creating a React application. But I think that so in memory, well, in memory, it can works quite well because React applications handle all the routing, so we shouldn't need to reload the page. So all the time the React application is managing the routes, we will have our JSON Web Token available and we will be able to do all the requests we need. So I think that's only if the user reloads the page, the React application manually, then we would need to ask for another another token. So the way it works is that we request the JSON Web Token. In order to do that, we need to use our credentials on the new site. But then that only happens once, and then we store the JSON Web Token, and from there we can use it. And the way to store securely the JSON Web Token in a way that can be accessed by our web application is to generate a cookie that can be only accessed via HTTPS and cannot be accessed by JavaScript. Yeah, that's a middle point. So secure WordPress. In WordPress we force HTTPS. We use strong use a middleware or hook in React. Okay, let's check this. What do you think, Gabriel? Okay, best practices and recommendations for using JSON Web Token. So use a JSON Web Token. The authentication flow, yeah, we need to pass the username and password, or username and password. Okay. Okay, can you tell me what would be a good workflow to get to get and store the JSON web token, taking into account that we need credentials in order to get the JSON web token in the first place. What kind of functionality would I need from the server? Would I need a server to make my React app more secure? What kind of... Vale. Yeah. So yeah, using a server for this authentication. So from my React application, I set a login form that sends those credentials to my backend server that calls and get the token. Okay, and then the server set a secure HTTP only token. Yeah, I think that's the best way. Okay, but I like this approach of yeah. How would this approach work? Okay. So we log in. So with this hybrid approach, what we do is we log in. From React to my backend, to my middleware, to my proxy. Okay, and I set a cookie. So my backend is the one in charge of authenticating with the WordPress JWT plugin, receives the access token, and and then is in the response body, we send the JSON token, but we also set a cookie with the refresh token HTTP only, a secure same site string. Okay, I understand. So we sent in the response body the JSON web token. Okay, let's do another diagram in case we have. So we have here the web app, which is a React web app. Then we have here my proxy server, server. And then we have here the WordPress REST API. Okay. So what we have here is we have here a login, app that sends credentials, credentials to my proxy server. With those credentials, I request the JSON web token with these credentials. Okay. And there is a specific endpoint, which could be something like a token, something like this. Okay. This is the JSON web token. So this returns a token. Let's not forget that this is server side. Okay, this is server side. So this is server side. Server side. So we can send this, but then what we send here is the response. No, I'm going to log this. Okay. So this JSON web token is sent as the response, but also set cookie that contains here the set cookie something like this. Set cookie. But also something like this, which means that there will be a cookie here available with the refresh token. Cookie with refresh token. Cookie and so okay, refresh token So what I want to do is this is refresh token, and this is refresh token, and this is okay, and this is the JSON web token. So the JSON web token will be in cookie, and this will be in memory. Something like that. So in this case, JSON web token will be in memory. As we are working in a React app, for example, we don't need to worry about anything else. In case there's a reload, entonces para aquí. No, ponemos aquí if reload, reload no, a ver, if reload, okay, if reload, then what I do is a request to refresh token with the refresh token code, which will be sent to and here this will be different. This will be like token, I don't know, refresh, something like that. Request refresh token. And with that, we will get another token, and then we will get renewed. Yeah, something like this. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so this is more or less. Then we have OAuth token, which is like the best way. It's the more complex one, but also it's the most secure one to implement authentication in a third-party application. So the thing here is that we are asking the user to enter their credentials into our application. So that may cause some untrust feelings. So in order to avoid that, in order to ask any user for entering their credentials, we can use OAuth. With OAuth, what we do is we implement in our site a way so from 30 apps, from third third-party apps, we can send people to our site to authenticate themselves on our site. So never our application is going to touch any credentials. Then the OAuth is going to send us a token, and that token is the one that we can use to authenticate requests. And we can do something similar like this. But instead of, so the React web app redirects to the login form of our WordPress site, then I need to structure this better. But yeah, it's a bit more complex, but the good thing about this is that our site, this is like the most professional way, and that's, for example, what Facebook uses, Google uses. This is this form where you are asked to log in Google, for example, or to log in Facebook. And the good thing is that never our application touches any credential, any password, and also it's much more granular because the user explicitly gives permission to the app to act on their behalf to do specific things, because that middle login form that we get explicitly displays what you are giving permissions for. Okay, so yeah, this is the most complex way, but also the most secure way, and the one that provides the best experience for the user. So yeah, this I could spend a whole screen for this method. Again, if you're interested, just let me know so I can prioritize topics. There's these streams. I have this repository with all the streams that I do. I'm sharing this in the chat, and I also have a discussion here with ideas for streams, so feel free to throw here any topics that you may be interested, and I can have a look at those and try to cover these topics in the streams. So yeah, I think that's for today. We have done like an exploration of the different authentication methods we have for the REST API. We have a few of them provided by core, but then we have some extra ones that we need plugins for. Cookies is the method used for internal authentication, for authentication within WordPress. Then we have application passwords that we can use for personal apps, for CLI, anything, any application where we don't have to expose the credentials, because the credentials will be sent to every request. And then we have the JSON Web Token, which is a bit more secure. And then we have OAuth, which is like the most professional way in terms of the experience of the user. So yeah, that's been all for today. Hope this has been helpful to anyone watching this. For me, at least, it has been it has been a good exercise to clarify the different processes, how this works internally, how WordPress can know which user is logged in order to authenticate the different endpoints. So yeah, hope this is useful. I will share this diagram in the streams repository as I've been doing with all the streams that I've done this year. Okay, hope you are you have finished the summer well, and that the return to work or to school or whatever you're doing has been smooth and has been good. So yeah, I'm back from my holidays. I've been 3 weeks on holidays, so this is the first stream after my holidays, and I have broken the ice. So yeah, from now on I will continue doing the streams. So yeah, see you next Friday. Okay, bye.